A few years ago, my wife bought this ivory-colored couch for our living room. It was kind of a dangerous gamble because we have these 4 kids running around the house, but they know the rules. I mean, they know they're not allowed on that couch or in that room. But one day, my wife was straightening up in that room and she discovered a long-kept secret. She flipped over one of the cushions and she found a stain. It wasn't just any stain, it was pink fingernail polish. We called our 3 daughters into that room, we lined them up and began questioning. I reached towards the couch to flip over the cushion and reveal the stain, but before I had a chance, my middle daughter, Morgan, she cracked. The guilt was too much. She started crying and she ran up the steps. I went after her and followed the sobs. I found her in the corner of a closet with her head between her knees. I got down next to her and I put my hand on her back and tried to comfort her. After a few minutes, the 2 of us went downstairs and she told her mom and me what she had done. And it was a secret that she had kept for a while. She was scared to death that somebody was going to find out. After a few minutes, she looked up at us with those big brown tear-filled eyes and she asked a question that just melted us. She asked, "Do you still love me?" My wife knelt down beside her and she whispered in her ear, "Morgan, you could never make a stain so big that it would keep us from loving you." I wish I could tell you that the stain was no longer there. I wish I could tell you that that couch came clean, but the stain is still there. It's always going to be there. But a funny thing happened. Morgan has started to tell the story of the stained couch. When we have company, she brings them in and she'll show them the couch and the stain. See, I think for her, a stain which once represented guilt and shame and fear, I think now it represents unconditional love, it represents acceptance, it represents grace.
Sent today, 9:07 a.m.
Hey, Dad. Sorry to bother you, but Mom said to call and remind you to send the alimony check. She still hasn't gotten it. Sorry, this wasn't my idea. Maybe we could see each other soon. Love you.
Message deleted. Next message. Sent yesterday, 4:15 p.m.
Hi, Gary. It's Joyce. Yeah, you may not remember me. You left your phone here last week before you snuck out, jerk.
Message deleted. First saved message. Sent July 27th, 2007.
Yeah, is this Joyce? Yeah, I'd like my phone back, please. Yeah, well, there's something on it that I need. And then why did you call me? Great. Yeah, I'll be right over.
In Jesus' time, there was a man named Matthew who had long stopped trying to hide his stain. His family and friends had likely written him off. At the very least, he was a massive disappointment to his own parents. I'm sure they had much different plans for their son. We know this because Matthew had another name, Levi. And that name indicates his parents were expecting him to serve the Lord like the Levites of the Old Testament. From birth, he would have been set aside, destined to be a spiritual leader for the nation of Israel. Matthew's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather were all likely priests who had faithfully served the Lord. By age 12, Matthew would have had the first 5 books of the Bible memorized.
Eyes on your own paper, Gary.
Yes, Miss Winters. It's probable that Matthew tried to become a disciple of one of the rabbis. But if he sent in his application, it must have been turned down. He didn't make the cut.
Eric, I need it. Come on. Wait.
Right. Blame Gary. Eric's a saint. Saint or not, I've donated I don't know how much money to this school, much more than him, and I want his son out of here. Nobody twisted your kid's arm, Bill. Eric's making his own choices.
Don't look so worried, Eric. Your dad's gonna get you out of this. I'm the one who's gonna get nailed to the wall.
You think controlling your classroom is unnecessary, and perhaps my money would be better spent somewhere else.
Come on, Eric.
Bill!
I'm sorry, Gary.
Now!
What's it gonna be, James?
I'm sorry. Gary needs to find a new school. He couldn't measure up. Matthew had flunked out of rabbi school. Now, this didn't just mean he was working for the first century equivalent to the IRS. To be a tax collector in Matthew's day, it meant that you were not only taking money from your own people, but that you were giving it to the despised, to the hated, occupying nation, the Romans.
Eric! Come on, man. Come on.
Why take such a job? Well, there was money to be made. The tax collectors would steal from their own people to line their own pockets. Matthew was a religious and social outcast. He was detested.
Did you tell your dad you were going?
I didn't. I just left.
Getting pretty bold, man.
I don't care what he says.
Moving around back there.
Is that your dad's?
Who else? Stealing from my own parents. Guess you could say stooping pretty low, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's not beneath me.
Wow.
My father deprived you of some fine Christian schooling. Think you're entitled to some compensation.
Like I said, man, getting pretty bold.
And you and me, we have a lot in common with Matthew. Because we don't measure up. We don't make the cut. The Bible says in Romans that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. In other words, none of us are good enough. We've all said things we wish we wouldn't have said. We've all done things we shouldn't have done. And so we scrub and scrub at the stain, but the stain just won't come out. One day, he is sitting at his tax collector booth on a busy street. I'm sure there were many things he wishes he could do over, but it was too late now. His stains would never come out. And we reach this point where we're not sure what to do. And so we live in denial of the stain, or we blame other people for the stain, or we rationalize and justify the stain.
Easy ride.
Or we just live in guilt and fear, hoping somehow no one will notice. But Matthew had reached a point where he was no longer even trying to hide his stain. His friends were prostitutes, thieves, and drunkards. His faults were open for all to see.
You've got to stop doing this.
Yeah, that's what you always say.
By now, Matthew would have been well aware of Jesus and his teachings. He would have known that Jesus wasn't your typical rabbi, but that he was doing things differently. Then one day, Jesus comes by the tax collector's booth of Matthew, and he offers a 2-word invitation. He says, "Follow me." Now, those who overheard the invitation would have been shocked. I'm sure that the other disciples were probably offended because Matthew was a tax collector. He wasn't just a sinner. He sinned for a living. He was a tax collector. And yet Jesus says, "Follow me." The question is, would Matthew do it? And Matthew understood that to follow a rabbi was a 24-hour-a-day commitment. Matthew understood that it was not just knowing what Jesus knows, it was going to be living how Jesus lived. Matthew understood that in order to follow Jesus, he must call Jesus Lord. The word Lord in the New Testament is interesting because most of the time when we hear it, we assume it is a reference to the divinity of Jesus. But in actuality, the Greek word Lord is the word kurios. Now here's what's interesting about this word. It is without question a slavery word. It belongs to the world of slavery. A kurios was the owner of the slave. And so when Matthew calls Jesus Lord, it's not so much an acknowledgement of his sovereignty or of his heavenly residence. It is saying that Jesus is his owner. Now, there's no way to call someone a kurios without calling yourself a doulos. Doulos is the Greek word for slave. A slave had no rights. A slave signed over everything to the master, even his own identity. A slave's one-word job description was obey. So Matthew understood to call Jesus Lord was to call himself a slave. Many fear that being a slave to Jesus means forfeiting your freedom, but in reality, it's only when we make him our master that we truly experience freedom.
Did it pass? What are we doing in here? Anna's gonna kill me.
Why? You were just a disorderly passenger. I'm the one who's gonna get nailed to the wall.
I'm gonna miss church tomorrow. What? Anna and I have been going...
Oh, yeah, Anna. She wants to change you. But I know you better than that. Church ain't gonna change you. We went to church when we were kids and we're doing the same thing.
Yeah, Gary, exactly. We did the same thing when we were kids, and now we're 42 years old.
And what's the matter with you?
I don't know. Been getting these chest pains.
Eric Nelson, your wife made your bail. You're free to go.
Well, if she doesn't kill you or turn you into some kind of religious nut, I'll see you later. Come on, Eric, lighten up. Look, I love Jesus just as much as the next guy, but just because I don't go to church...
The next guy's in a jail cell.
Yeah, Eric. Well, you are the next guy, so don't get all high and mighty with me.
Why do you have to insult my wife? Has it ever occurred to you that some people might actually take their beliefs seriously?
Yeah, Eric. Well, people like your dad...
I meet people every week who were slaves to something, but they found freedom when they became a slave to Jesus Christ. They were slaves to possessions or slaves to their own pleasures. They were slaves to people, what other people thought of them. But they discovered that true freedom is only found when they live as a slave to Jesus Christ. Instead of shame and bondage and death, we find joy and grace and eternal life. You will never know true freedom until you have completely surrendered and become a slave to Jesus Christ.
She wants a divorce. What happened?
I don't know. I woke up to go to work this morning. The kids were gone, and I found that.
It's all right, Eric. Just calm down.
Don't tell me to calm down. It's not all right.
Eric, listen to me. I've been... Eric.
Breathe.
Eric. All right. All right. What's going on?
I can't breathe. Oh, God, not
right.
now, please.
Hold on. Hold on. It's all right.
If being a slave to sin has left you broken and bruised, and you find your life in pieces, my master loves you, and if you let him, he will take the pieces of your life and turn them into a beautiful mosaic. My master invites all who are weary and heavy burdened to come to him and find rest for your souls, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And when you become a slave to my master, he makes you a son, he makes you a daughter, he calls you a friend.
Mr. Nelson, we've confirmed that you've had a very serious heart attack. We still need a few more tests to be sure, but the results from the electrocardiogram indicate to me that the cause of your attack was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a condition in which
Matthew finds himself at a tax collector's booth. All day long, his own people remind him of what a failure and what a disappointment he is.
Why? What did I do?
And then a rabbi stops in front of the booth.
In some cases, this condition is caused by a virus.
Perhaps Matthew assumes that this rabbi will point a finger and tell everyone who will listen about his stains and of what a disgrace this tax collector is to God. Instead, Jesus says, "Follow me."
The important thing to know is that this could very well happen again. I'd like to discuss a surgery, but I can't stress enough the importance of lifestyle changes. But we'll talk more after the tests are conclusive and after you've had a chance to rest.
Thank you, Doctor. Look, Eric, advice is cheap, but Anna is stressing you out. You talk about lifestyle change, start there.
What if I had died, Gary?
You didn't.
I will one day. What would I have left behind? What if God's trying to tell me something?
Like what? Get more exercise?
I gotta stop doing this.
That's what you always say.
And what would Matthew do? Here's what we read. Matthew got up and followed him.
I need you to leave.
When Jesus said to Matthew, "Follow me," he was making it clear that his invitation to follow is not just for the religious elite or for the morally upright, for those who have their lives together. His invitation is for all of us who are hiding some stains. Jesus said, "Anyone who would come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." Anyone. Anyone is a pretty inclusive word. Anyone can follow Jesus. Anyone who's ever thought to themselves, "I've gone too far, my stain is too big." Anyone who's ever laid awake at night and said, "I can't believe what I've done." Anyone who's ever looked in the mirror and said to themselves, "I can't believe what I've become." Anyone can follow. Anyone who knows down deep that they've got really nothing to offer Jesus. Really, it's what Jesus offers us that changes things. On the day he said to Matthew, "Follow me," something changed in him that day. And how do we know all this about Matthew's life? How do we know about his past failures and mistakes? It's because he tells us. He invites us into the living room. He shows us the stains on the couch. And he tells us a story of love and grace. And these days, when people speak of Matthew, they don't think of him as some tax collector who sold his soul to the Roman government for a paycheck. No, we remember Matthew as one of the 12 disciples. We remember him as a follower of Jesus Christ.
Please.
But just because Matthew left his past behind and started following Jesus doesn't mean he was perfect. Far from it. Even after we decide to follow Jesus, we continue to need his grace for the journey. But here's the thing, his grace doesn't just invite us to follow, it teaches us to follow.
First, saved message, sent July 27th, 2007.
Gary, it's me. Eric. We haven't talked since since that day, I've had a lot of time to think. 3 years. I guess I'm one of those nuts who doesn't take it all seriously now. You were right, what you said in jail. Church can't change people. Anna can't change me. But God can change anyone. I know that's a heavy thing to drop to you on a voicemail, but maybe we could talk about that in person. I hope you'll call me back so we can. And so I can ask for your forgiveness. Because I wasn't always the best friend to you. And I'm sorry. Give me a call. Bye.
Message saved.
And we find ourselves at the same crossroads as Matthew. You're guilty. You know what you deserve. You know what you have coming. But the words of Jesus are words full of grace. He says, "Follow me." You think there must be a mistake, and doesn't he know who I am? Doesn't he know what I've done? What about my stains?
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, no problem, Gary.
I really need to talk to someone. Is this a bad time?
You're fine. If you want, you can just have a seat on the couch.
Thanks.
Okay.
I guess the first thing
Jesus knows your stains. In fact, he died on the cross so that all our stains could be washed clean. So how much longer will you live with these regrets? How much longer will you say, maybe tomorrow? When will you let God's grace replace your guilt? When will you accept a fresh start and a second chance? When will you respond to the simple, gracious words of Jesus? Follow me.